Well, hello everybody. Happy Tuesday. I am actually here on a Tuesday. Came on a little bit earlier than you guys are used to, but excited. I've got a lot to discuss today, and we'll see if we can wrap it in a nice, concise fashion. And let me just remember here to put my microphone in. It's sitting on my lap there. Dragon Lady. Excited to say I've been invited to be part of the Dragon Thunder Summit coming up, being hosted by Kevin Humphreys in the UK. He's got, I want to say, at least 8, if not more, Dragon Masters, teachers, those that work with dragons or have information to share about dragons, coming together on July 2nd. So I just posted the first post about it yesterday in our For the Love of Dragons group, and there's a link to just go and sign up. It's a free summit. You can listen to myself, I think Aurora Kensington, Diana Cooper is going to be there speaking. Man, I can't remember the list. I was impressed, and there's quite a few on there. So some you have heard of, some you haven't, but I think it's going to be a wealth of information, a wealth of energy. There's got to be something happening there with the dragons wanting to create that. He's been divinely guided to pull this summit together of Dragon Thunder, pulling all the dragon riders and dragon hearts together to really put a big blast of information, knowledge, energy, activation out to the globe. It's time. There's a big wave of awakening coming, and I'm excited about that. So in line with what I like to do every week, we've got some great, I had 3 separate questions come in this week. Some will be a long answer, some will be a shorter answer. But I do feel like they're really fascinating questions and touch everyone. So I like to address these on our group format here so that everybody can benefit from it, whether you're listening on the YouTube channel or here on the live or catching it on the replay in the For the Love of Dragons group on Facebook. So the first one was about the name George. And the question was, George was known as the Dragon Hunter or the Dragon Slayer. And why would someone be named that, for one? And what might it mean for that person and their dragon connection? So a part of that's going to be understood a little deeper after I tackle the second question. But let's dive into this one first. So why would someone be named Dragon Hunter or Dragon Slayer? A lot of us have locked away in us memories of being hunted, being chased. We had a period on the planet where dragons were present, whether we were in human form or actual dragon form, and we were very clear with our energy. We were very present with ourselves and our beings, but particularly when we were in dragon form, we were starting to be hunted, starting to be feared, starting to be mistrusted for whatever reason. And it was part of the energy dividing itself and polarizing in a greater way. So as that happened, that's why a lot of the dragons, I've talked about this before, why a lot of the dragons went down into the land. They went off to other realms for a while. They buried themselves, hid themselves away until such time and went to sleep until such time as the humans on the planet would be ready to show that they were ready to interact in a loving way again and receive what the dragons had to offer and give back to them, or at least listen, not fear, not chase, not hunt. So there's a couple of reasons why that whole Dragon Hunter, Dragon Slayer piece came about. Was, yes, they did start being hunted. They start because they started to be afraid. People started to be afraid. They were given a bad rap, and so hunted unfairly, without merit or without reason. And this legend or this story of dragon slaying, dragon hunting started to be spread across the lands. What agenda would put that in place? An agenda that wants fear and control, an agenda that wants to give something that is of God and loving a bad name, something that wants to push any belief in nature beings, consciousness that is not of a human form that could benefit. Think of all the pagans, the druids, the earth magic practitioners that were so connected with conscious beings, with light, with that love. That's who the dragons were working with. And they slowly had to finally be in the mist because those people were being persecuted. So go back historically and look at what agenda started coming out. Who is George? Saint George. What would name something a saint and push an agenda forward that would not want any earth worship, any actual direct connection with the divine or with consciousness, with light, to be available to people in the world? They're not controllable if they can heal themselves. They're not controllable if they can communicate with God directly. So thinking historically back on that, I'm going to let you answer that question for yourself. But that is where this term dragon hunter, dragon slayer came in, and why the legend or myth, the story that was created around St. George, whether he was actually that or not, he may have been created as a saint for that purpose, to say, we slay these, we control these, we are masters over this, we are the conquerors. But the deeper question here that was asked is, what might it mean for that person and their dragon connection? Anybody named George is not necessarily tied to that energy. If you have memory of dragon hunter or dragon slayer in you, there is something within that to go back and karmically see, why did you create that incarnation as a balance? What was within that experience that you had to, on a soul level, go out and experience? There's always a reason. But part of the perpetuation of polarity and creation of polarity and division and that real sinking into what is considered like the Dark Ages, the time of greatest polarization on the planet before we could actually start coming back into merge and unity, had to be created. So those kinds of terminology and legends and stories had to be perpetuated or created first in order to have that division. So it's interesting. I hadn't even realized when I felt the dragons that wanted to be present in the scene here today. I've got the flame dragon and the black and white dragons merging. I hadn't even really thought about the questions yet when I felt the dragons that wanted to be on the wall here. And now realizing the black and white dragons, for me in this particular image, is about when they merge, when they come back together. And interestingly, this question is really about the split. When the division, the polarity started pulling us really in different directions of shadow and light. And so they're obviously here to try and rectify and bring that release of that polarization piece by this question being in the collective and in the energetic discussion. It brings the truth to light. It brings it up to the surface to be released, so that is no longer a dragon hunter, dragon slayer, poacher. These are terms that are still present in parts of the world, even if it's not about dragons. There are still hunters and slayers and poachers, and we start healing that energy division when we bring the truth to light of why it was created. It was created to actually bring us into that division, bring us into hatred of something, fear of something, control, manipulation. So turning that table, every time we have a discussion that brings it into truth and light, we are healing a level of that. So anyone that's named George, you don't have a connection necessarily because of that name, but there may be a perpetuation of names in the world to try and hold that energy still out there. We are way beyond that now and can release it with a simple, like, wow, I have no connection to that energy. I don't have that name in myself, but I do have the being hunted as dragon as part of my memory field. Being slayed in different instances as dragon, enchained, prisoned. All that being forgiven and released. Every time one of us as dragons heals one of those woundings, it actually helps release all of those paradigms. So beautiful question. I love that it came in. And it is tied to this other question. And I'll just read the whole thing. I tried to paraphrase in the description of the video today briefly, but it says, Dear Rai, you sometimes say that we, in quotes, human beings, or in parentheses, are not all dragons. Do you mean that we're not awakened to our dragon nature? So I want to discuss again, and I've talked about it before, but it's been a while. So it's always good to refresh, especially because there's so many new people in the group. When I talk about being a dragon, knowing that I'm a dragon heart, first and foremost soul level incarnation was as dragon format, as like what would be considered or recognized energetically as a dragon by its signature. That the dragon realms, in my memory, were one of the earliest created by Mother, Father, God, that source energy that is the source of all creation, created to be very divinely loving, very high octave vibrationally, unconditionally loving, which is why we experience such amazing love, power, and wisdom when we're with the dragons. So, my soul level format is what that is. But every being out there, whether it's star being or unicorns in the rainbow realm, centaurs, fairies, anything in the magical kingdoms with what we might call nature sprites, humans, mantid beings, they may be an incarnational fractal where if they're, say, dragon like myself, I've had incarnational aspects in star bodies. I've had incarnational aspects in human form, but my soul level light body, my original soul format is dragon. But that's not true for everyone because God created so many, an abundance, an infinite amount of life form. And when we say starseed, there are many here on the planet that are starseed at their first and foremost incarnation. They were born in the stars. They are, many of them, humanoid framework as far as like walking upright, four appendages, head, eyes, sort of like us, structure, but they're born in the stars. And there are other star beings that look very, very different. They are not dragon in the same way that I am dragon. So, not to confuse the issue, but in this system, when the powers that be, I would call it God, were ready to create this universe and this expression, or those creators that had been given that divine authority to create, decided that this was going to be brought into being. The dragons were asked to volunteer in service to hold the framework, to be part of that construction team because they're masters at it, and the ability to hold the vibration with a loving service intent. That was their masters of. And I have memory of actually when the commanders said yes to that and said, yes, we will be the volunteers to hold that. So imagine this massive thing being created and the dragons hold the informational grid, which is crystalline in nature. It looks like a giant geometric or spider web. That's called a geometric spider web that encompasses the whole universe. Well, in the earth plane, where the focus was going to be on an ascension platform, every being that was created here, because they're within that matrix or grid work of, I don't like the word matrix because the reality matrix here is a different term that we associate with non-reality. It's a false reality. Let's call it the grid. They're part of that grid, and so there is an aspect of dragon energy that I have always considered connected to the woman Hara dragon in every human being that is born and has that because they have that connection into that crystalline framework by being born into the system. But that doesn't mean they are dragon at their core level like I might be or you might be. They might, on a soul level, this might be their very first experience in a body in form ever, which means their first and foremost soul level format is human. Or maybe they're an angelic being that was born as an angelic being realm and they've chosen to come in and have a human body. So hopefully this isn't confusing, but every human on earth has that connection to dragon energy because of the crystalline dragon nature that is part of everything in, or every life form, every human life form in this system. But soul level, created by God in whatever system was your first system, that is your soul format. That does not have to be dragon. That's where when I say we're not all dragons, that's what I'm referring to. We might all as humans have a dragon aspect because that is our gateway to an ascension process, to that crystalline grid work that activates something within us that is our pure crystalline DNA, human blueprint format, that will then allow us access into an ascension process at whatever point we choose to do that, that moves up into the higher grids of this vibrational grid work. But those of us that have come from other systems to be the light teams and light warriors here to facilitate, because we've gone through ascension processes in other systems, a lot of those that came to do this, they came because they were masters at it. If we have that experience, we are here to help. And I would say that my gut feeling is roughly about 2/3 of the planet is a team of light, whether they're awake or not. They came in to assure an ascension success by having lots of what we might call boots on the ground, light team on the ground. It still means that we go into a human body, we have to wake up. And so there are a lot of light team members here that are not awake yet. They might be very beautiful, good people, but they haven't awoken to their higher aspect yet. They're not on that spiritual awakening path yet, but they have the potential for it. But it's just like when you send in, when you know you want success, do you send 10 workers or do you send 100 knowing that 10 are needed to get the job done? So you send in 100 so that 10 of them will actually be functional and make it. It's just like, they're very interesting that this is popping in my mind. I'm a bee guardian now, and when a hive needs to create a new queen, when they swarm to split because their numbers are healthy, the hive that's left, as the queen takes a bunch of bees and goes to a new location, she leaves everything in place with enough eggs for them to requeen. So what she does is leave hundreds of eggs, and the bees will create maybe a dozen queen cells, maybe 5, maybe 6. They'll create enough queen cells to have success, where they will actually have enough queens born that they raise with royal jelly in this whole process, that go out and then not only successfully mate to come back to the hive to lay eggs indefinitely, because for however long they live, they're just laying eggs. That's all they do. They never leave the hive again after that. But they go on a mating flight and they go out. And so say they have 12 queens that are raised. They hatch out of their queen cells. They go out and maybe 5 of them successfully mate and make it back to the hive without being eaten by a bird, without falling to the ground in rain, without whatever mishap happening, getting hit by a car. 5 of them come back to the hive. They've successfully bred. And then they will have the strongest survive, where they will actually kill off the other queens and the remaining survivor is the strongest. That's going to be the strongest survival of the fittest for that hive, for that rejuvenation and renewal, for a new hive to be growing. That's a success story because they sent 12 in to guarantee 1. It's the same thing with sending light teams in here, sending a lot of beings in. And why? Knowing that we're not all dragon, there's a large percentage that are, because a lot of us or a lot of the dragons have the most experience in ascension realms or planets or systems that have gone through an ascension process. A lot of dragons have been there for it. So they send in teams that have the know-how, hoping that many of them will wake up. Of those that wake up, will they be activated to the degree that it takes to push the front wave forward? So it was about sending massive amounts. So if 2/3 of the planet is potentially light workers, how many are actually awake? We're past a critical mass now, but without needing to speak in specific numbers, all right, this helps us understand we come from, and this is a beautiful piece about Gaia as the experiment, as the jewel that she is, the gem that she is in the universe. She actually affects the multiverse by having this quadrant of the multiverse, the geometric massive grid of this universe interlocked with the much larger multiverse. This sector's been dark. It has not been lit up and vibrating at the highest octave of energy running through that, which means it's been non-functional, which is affecting a lot of systems to a detriment. So part of the creation of this system, part of the seeding now for a potential ascension, completion, and success, was to bring it into harmonic of community. Because as this vector or sector of the grid lights up and is actually communal harmonic, every one of those beings that is here from another system that was part of that success carries that coding back of communal harmonic, which is what the whole point of the New Earth grids is, to move into true community. And I've talked about this once before, but I'll touch on it again because it's such an important concept that was a huge realization when it happened. There are many systems out there with beautiful, loving beings. But if there's a system that say they're all, I'm just going to choose the planet Pluto, whether there's beings there or not. There's a planet, it's called Pluto, and it's made up of all these beautiful beings, very loving, but they're homogenous. They're all the same. They all are very, very similar in genetic makeup. They all have similar interests. It's homogenous. It's a community because they operate within and for each other very well. They operate very well in community, but they don't have external stressors of different culture communities or different kinds of beings that they have to interact with. So there's tension in that way that they want to learn how to interact at a greater communal harmonic. So if we took the example of like the United States being the melting pot of cultures, it started creating that communal harmonic where even within a city, I'm just going to choose, let's say San Francisco or Los Angeles, and there's a community, and this is not racial, this is just explaining like cultural communities. There's pockets of Hispanic, there's pockets of Korean, there's pockets of Russian, there's pockets of Jewish, there's pockets of Scottish, Irish descent. Wherever they be, there's communities within the larger community, and the experiment in the United States is still about how all of those still interface with each other. And you might imagine that that Pluto system is one of those solo cultural communities. So it's the Chinatown area, it's the Chinese area, or the Asian area. And there's another system that they want to be able to interact with, but they don't very well. And maybe it's over here on the other side of town. And by Earth being able to come together as a global community without the cultural, racial barriers that have been part of the polarized system, as we come into the true communal harmonic, because the fifth dimensional, you can call it New Earth, 5D, quantum field, it is only in place and held by a crystalline system, networking system that requires transparency, which is a communal harmonic, to actually operate in community. Transparency to connect into that grid, which as we go through our ascension process, we're not afraid of anything anymore. So we become that transparency of who we be, in full acceptance with no judgment, unconditional embrace of that being's, whoever's next to us, in front of us, their truth and who they be, and it's a different field, and it separates the division. So this is why the communal harmonic is made up here on planet Earth of so many types of beings, that many, many systems sent light workers in. They sent representatives in from lots of different star systems, lots of different multiverses, lots of different realms. So the rainbow realms with all of its magical beings and kingdoms, the dragon realms, the Lyran realms, the different star systems, to be part of the creation of that true communal harmonic, because all of those beings that are here in service to that will have that piece that they've mastered, that they then take back to their home system to expand its vibration into that, which makes the entire multiverse and its interactions with each other more operational. It's such a beautiful thing that I was made aware of, I want to say 2 years ago or so, of why it is a system of beings from different places, different soul makeup, different original signature, which is why there are so many different types of beings, and why I might be dragon, but not everybody is. Even though here on Earth we have a piece of that crystalline dragon aspect to wake up to, which is like our key code to get through the ascension gate. That's what that dragon connection is about. So I hope that question made sense. And then the final one, very briefly, is the lineage of sun dragons, because I talked about them a couple weeks ago in depth, from our sun or our central sun. They come from all the suns. And just like families birthed on different continents that are still heritage, ancestry, bloodline connected, the lineage of sun dragons hails originally from the great central sun, the original central sun, where the divine source energy is constantly birthing things. That's where I believe this the greatest, maybe we'll call it the greatest central sun, where source energy is, where Mother, Father, God is in residence, where that energy sources from. And all the systems that have been created that have that connection point into that through their sun. There's greater central sun, our sun, but they all line up and connect to each other, so that the sun dragons are not limited to our system. You'll meet sun dragons that are from our direct sun. You'll meet some that are from the greater central sun, from the greatest, from other suns, from, say, Alcyon in the Pleiadian system. They would have sun dragons coming from the sun of each system. So just like, I'm going to just use my heritage with, I've got Scottish, Irish, Norwegian predominantly in me, and I'm of Irish descent, born in the United States. And I have blood relatives born in lots of different states. And I have blood relatives born in Ireland. And I have blood relatives born somewhere on the European continent when they migrated there. We're all Irish, but we hail from one place. So I don't claim the European source, or this state, or that state. I can only claim mine, but it means we're still related. We're still lineage, if that makes sense. So a lot of big, almost confusing topics. If I brought up more questions, please put them in the comments or posts, or send me an email or an IM message so that I can clarify it next week when we come back together. Or if you have other questions that popped in because of this, send them to me. I love these discussions and coming forward to give you guys more awareness, more remembrance, more tools for your activation journey. And again, I will remind you that we have a beautiful summit coming up, an opportunity to learn a lot about the dragons on July 2nd. I will be a part of that, looking forward to it. And I will see you guys sometime next week. Talk to you much later, and have a beautiful week. Dragon hugs from me for now. Bye.